It's World Fair.
Yes.
You were actually very, very
Like lately, very rare.
In
You know, it's
1970, yeah. Oh my gosh.
We had the best tips, coolest itineraries.
So-
Yoga was phenomenal.
Yeah, you need to share that because we have a hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other two.
All right,
I'm in the next.
guys, we're gonna get started. Everybody?
Please respond if you are present. Nathan Burlingame,
Present.
Murray Davis,
Present.
Van Greer,
Present.
Robert Duncan,
Here.
Andrew Backler,
Here.
Alex Foster, here. Carmela Ham, Ray Henley,
Here.
Jerry Laporte,
Here.
Joan Lawrence, here. Rebecca Meyer, here. Katie Myers,
Here.
Mark Turnbull, Andy Wenchel,
Here.
Dick Woodruff. Have a quorum.
Okay, welcome to the May 21st, 2025 Historical Affairs Review Board meeting. Effective July 1st, 2024, updated state legislation continues to require certain county board appointed officials, including the HLRB, to have an in-person board conducted. HLRB hearings are provided in a hybrid environment, both in person and streamed online. Members of the public may attend and participate either virtually or in person. For members of the board joining us virtually this evening, please join us via the Microsoft Teams link. Please keep your device muted if you'd like to speak, but ensure your video is turned on and you are visible during the entire meeting. For members of the public joining us this evening, today's meeting is available to stream from the county website via Microsoft Teams link. There is also a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. Please keep your device muted and video turned off until you are called upon to speak. For public speakers who have pre-registered, please wait until you are called on to speak. For those who have not pre-registered, requests for public speaking can still be submitted. Staff will do their best to accommodate those requests. However, we cannot guarantee that they will be met. Speaker slips are available at the front of the room for in-person speakers who have not pre-registered. Public comment is only allowed for items advertised on the HLRB's agenda. The ability to sign up to speak will no longer be available after the HALRB chair has stated that public testimony has concluded. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, written comments, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. You may use the chat for technical assistance. All voting will be done by a call of the roll. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website and the county's commission meeting YouTube page. Avoid sharing any personal information that you would not like to be public. All information associated with today's meeting, whether with written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. Okay. And we have our new member, Nathan, joining us. So, Nathan, do you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
The board.
Absolutely. My name is Nathan Burlingame. I have lived in Arlington since 2003, and my wife and I have lived in Arlington and Waycroft Woodlawn since 2008. With an 8-year-old son that goes to Glebe Elementary. I have degrees in archaeology and anthropology, focused on historical archaeology. I am a real estate investor through our Johnson Associates portfolio. Wakefield Manor, Courthouse Manor, which you probably know. And so I hope I can be of value to this board in providing a perspective of an owner and operator of historic properties. We're very proud of those properties. They also have unique challenges. I'm hoping I can speak to that throughout my term and better inform the board of the realities of the history.
Thank you, Nathan. Okay, should do the review and approval of the draft minutes.
Please respond yes if you approve the April minutes. Nathan Burlingame,
I abstained, so it's not present.
Murray Davis,
Yes.
Van Dreyer,
Yes.
Robert Duncan,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster, Ray Henley,
Abstain.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Abstain.
Becca Meyer,
Abstain.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
to do that.
We're working, without our usual, organizer, so let's actually back up.
Okay, we're gonna do that one more time.
Okay, sorry, everybody. And also, I should also ask if there were any comments to the
It
minute.
seemed flawless
Were
to
we,
me.
yeah, it sounds like no one had any comments. Okay, all right, so I move that we approve the April meeting
I'll second that.
minutes.
We're gonna do this. All right, please respond yes if you approve the April minutes. Nathan Burlingame,
Abstain.
Amari Davis,
Yes.
Ann Dreyer,
Yes.
Robert Duncan,
Yes.
Andrew Fackley,
Yes.
Alex Foster, Ray Henley,
Abstain.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Abstain.
Becca Meyer,
Abstain.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Mark Turnbull,
Yes.
Andy Winchell,
Yes.
motion passed.
All right. The next is the consent agenda. There was one item. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that or want to pull it up?
I have a question. I have a question, so I think we should take it off the consent agenda.
Oh, okay. Do it.
I don't think we
No,
do.
okay. No, right, just good on that.
You don't need to necessarily make a presentation, but maybe you can answer my question. Yeah, and one of the, I don't have, one of the pictures that was in the drawings, it showed that this sign is significantly higher than the other signs on that. And I thought that when we approved the other signs, they were all the same height. If you want to bring up the drawings,
Yeah.
you can show it on the screen.
So this puts us now on the discussion agenda.
Yes.
So yes, we're talking about the Buckingham Historic District and their request to install new signage. There,
I was. We're almost there.
The second.
that second one down.
Takes a village.
Sure.
There it is.
Go down, okay, that's
There you go.
the one that's in the middle, over on the left-hand side. See how it's much higher than the other sign, the way it's portrayed, and the ones we've approved in the past have always been the same height. And I know there's a question of how the depth, how far it is away, but it's supposed to be 4 inches and it's 7 inches. And I think the staff report said that that won't affect how you view it. And I don't have any problems with that, but I do have problems if it's significantly higher. It looks like it's significantly higher than the one
Same
next.
size as the one that.
Yeah, but that's I think
That's
it's,
my understanding.
I think that the height of the sign is what's there existing.
Previous.
See, it looks like it's both higher, maybe it's wider,
Boost mobile.
20 inches. And What is the one next to it looks like it's less than 20 inches.
Yep, so this is the existing sign right now, right?
No,
No, it's new
the
one.
existing sign says Boost Mobile and it's painted over.
There we go.
Okay, those are the same size. The new one looks like it's bigger. It's not supposed to be. I don't think.
That one looks bigger too.
It's just the top, it's top line instead of bottom.
Pardon?
You're right.
Just the restaurant sign doesn't have the 3 horizontal lines. Yeah, it is bigger.
Yeah, that's not what's before us
Is
tonight.
it bigger or did they just put, for the example,
That's
did they
up
just
the
put like a graphic on there? And show? Even though the actual,
Do we
dimensions
know
are gonna
what
be
the
the same.
existing height is?
Yep.
You know, Jerry, it may be the shadow that makes it look bigger.
Anna, are you online right now?
That one.
Yeah,
is
I'm
correct.
calling
That's
the
correct.
person that designed this
It's the new
sign.
one.
Just give me a few minutes here.
Okay.
Okay, I'm on the board meeting with Arlington about the National Smash sign. Yes. Is it the same height as all the other signs that are in that shopping center? Yeah. Okay, because in the drawing, it looks bigger, and that's what they're worried about.
No, I did mark same size as other signs as a because landlord gave me very specific guidelines, so I follow
Okay.
it, so it should be same size as those
Okay,
others.
the sign is the same sign, same size as the existing signs.
Okay. So it's the picture, I guess, that's sort of.
But can we have staff verify that?
Yeah.
Some
So-
way?
Yeah, so what I think we could do is we could, we might need to request that the renderings be updated. Make sure that everything is actually lined up where it should be, as well as the size. And staff can confirm that it's the same size as what is the existing.
I'll call you back when I need you.
You can't really tell, both of these are supposed to be the same height. And so if the one on the front is higher than the current ones, the one on the side is probably higher too. So I think that's problematic, although you can't tell from the pictures that we have here, but once it's up, I
Yeah.
think you'd be able to tell that. From
I think the
looking.
motion will be that it's approved contingent on it being the same height.
Yeah.
And I think the graphics need to be revised, and then I think staff, I guess the issue would be that it significantly changes the graphics, like if the letters have to get smaller. I mean, the assumption here is that this is just a graphic problem.
Yeah.
But if it's not, for some reason, then it might have to come back. To be approved.
Yeah.
Okay, I can definitely revise the drawings. Who should I send those to?
You can send those to me, Lauren Ferris, and we can work that out to make sure that everything lines up the way it's supposed to, that we confirm it, and the motion tonight will cover that condition.
Okay,
if
and what
there-
is your email address?
Sure, it is L Ferris, FARRIS at arlingtonva.us. And I can also email you tomorrow morning, just in case there's any issues with my email. So, and if for some reason, we're not able to get renderings lined up to where they should be, that shouldn't be an issue. But if there is, then I agree, we would need to have them come back.
Okay, yeah, we will update that because the landlord criteria did state specifically that the sign could not exceed 20 inches. It had to be the same size as the other signs.
Okay.
So it is
All right.
just a graphics issue.
Okay. All right, based on that, I move that we approve COA 25-04 at 301 North Fleet Road in the Buckingham Historic District, contingent upon staff confirming that the sign is the same size as the other existing signage and that the graphic is updated to show the same.
Second. Okay, you first. Second.
Can I make one last comment? I'm very glad to see this happen because the signage on this particular part of that development, that strip has been like that for a very long time. And I'm not sure that all the signs that are supposed to be in compliance with a single format are currently in compliance. It's a different issue, but it is something to keep in mind because it kind of leaves the door open for some new tenant to not follow the rule.
That's a good point. And unfortunately, I know the inspector who look at that and see if we
Gee, I never would have guessed that.
confirm anything.
Thanks.
The signs have to come down.
Right.
Okay, so we are. Yeah, call the roll.
Okay. So please respond yes if you approve the motion. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Dan Dreyer,
Yes.
Robert Dudka,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster. Yes. Ray Henley,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joe Moore,
Yes.
Becca Fluger, yes. Katie Myers,
Yes.
Mark Campbell,
Yes.
Andy Winchell,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to the session agenda. First up, we have Larry Danforth with the ownership.
Oh, there was a whole bunch of slides I had here that I should have been scrolling. So, okay, we'll make this. Larry, if you want, we have some chairs over here. You can roll to the front so you can join it.
Thanks, go.
You're part of the team. Just be a little brief.
Staff will give their presentation and then we'll go to you, Larry.
You have the first page of the.
So I'm going to give my staff report and
Oh.
then from there, then you will be able to speak. And then the DRC will give their summary and then we can go into discussion after that. All right, so staff. So the Walker Chapel and Cemetery was designated a local historic district on October 3rd, 1978. Its congregation is the third oldest in Arlington County. The original church building was demolished between 1936 and 1952. The current chapel was constructed in 1962. Most recently, the HLRB approved several COAs. Actually, this just should be okay. Several COA projects for the cemetery and 2 COA projects for the chapel. COA 22-09 was for a replacement of the defunct air handler. You'll see the photo of the amazing handler, compressor and condenser, and COA 22-17 for the removal of the defunct fire escape on the rear of the building and infilling the opening with a cellular PVE sheet. So the applicant is proposing to make exterior modifications to the chapel as part of the congregation's efforts to restore and conduct maintenance to the building this year. First, the applicant is proposing to replace any rotten portions in the chapel's soffit and fascia with PVC. And the applicant plans to preserve all wood surfaces, including trim, as they are able, but is requesting to replace what they might not be able to salvage with salvage the wood and instead have it with PVC. PVC would match the existing wood in design and dimension. The second aspect, the applicant is proposing to restore a wood fire exit door on the north elevation, along with its existing wood transom window above the doorway. And I think, so this is the package that we received from Walker Chapel, but you'll see that I've done some amazing editing to it. Talk about that. The DRC considered this application at its May meeting. The submission reviewed by the DRC originally proposed to replace any rotten portions of the chapel's trim, soffit, fascia portico, gable, and steeple with PVC trim, and replacing a wood fire exit door along the north elevation with a steel door that would match the existing 6-panel design, and it would be painted. So the commissioners asked if there had been a survey conducted of the building to determine how much of the trim would need to be replaced. Mr. Danford expressed that this would occur this summer, but that he would be surprised if it was more than 5% of the existing. So some of the DRC commissioners felt that the use of PVC everywhere was appropriate so as to avoid having to complete the work again in the future, whereas others felt the use of PVC was only appropriate in areas with high exposure to moisture. All commissioners expressed a preference for the use of a wood door instead of the proposed steel door for the side exit, but understood why the proposed change was requested. The DRC felt it was important to discuss the project with full HLRB placed onto the discussion agenda. So since the DRC meeting, though, the applicant has amended the project. The applicant has agreed to use wood in the character-defining areas of the chapel, such as the steeple and the portico area, and to use PVC only in high moisture areas where there is existing deterioration or mold, such as the chapel soffit or fascia. Am I saying that right? Fascia. They are planning to preserve all wood surfaces, including trim. However, they are requesting the ability to replace what they cannot salvage with PVC rather than wood. PVC would match the existing wood in design and dimension, and also the applicant is proposing to restore the wood fire exit door on the north elevation, along with its wood transom window above the doorway instead of replacing it with a steel door. So staff recommends approval of the subject application. Since the LHD was designated in 1978 before design guidelines were individually developed, we are following the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, and we're using that as our guide design review. The restoration project of the exterior steeple, portico cable, and surrounding soffits and fascia would repair deteriorated wood where possible, which complies with standard number 6 of the Secretary of Interior standards. But the proposal includes the removal of areas where wood has deteriorated beyond repair and calls for the replacement of those sections of PVC, a modern material. Although the design and other visual qualities of the PVC would match the existing wood, it would be a different material. Given that the steeple and portico gable are character-defining features of the church, staff would prefer that the deteriorated sections in need of replacement be replaced with wood to comply completely with standard number 6. However, staff feel that the use of PVC in areas prone to rot or where there is high exposure to moisture, such as the areas near or underneath the gutters, is appropriate for the long-term maintenance of the property. These areas are not distinctive features of the building, therefore, according to standard number 6, have less of a requirement for their complete match to the existing materials. Additionally, staff supports the amended application to restore the wood door because this would retain historic material and would be more appropriate for the historic property. So that concludes the staff report. And we have Larry here tonight. I hope I got all of the changes correct. If there's anything you would like to correct me on, I won't be offended.
Picture, if we could go back up. On the left, you see a piece missing. This is that piece. And you can see the condition that the entire church is in. Even though this project will only last an expected 4 to 6 weeks, you can see from the piece of wood, it took us 10 years to make the decision. Typical of projects. Our plan is to bring in the contractor to start the painting, and he will scrape all of the building, all the molding, sand, pressure wash, whatever's necessary to get it down to a bare state. In that process, we expect him to encounter pieces that are rotted, especially where downspouts join the gutters, in the corners where 2 miter pieces meet, things like that. Our experience with this piece of wood and in a beautiful door that we just finished restoring on the outside of the church. It's about 12 feet tall, all kinds of molding all around it. The door itself is 84 inches wide, very unusual. And we decided to restore it because it was just so beautiful, we couldn't find a replacement or afford a replacement. And it looks like the day it came out of the factory. Due to the marvel of today's tools, Bondo, a lot of elbow grease. And based on that success and the recommendation of the DRC on the second door that you saw on the bottom, we decided to restore that door also. With the increase in prices for steel, it was actually cheaper to restore it than to buy a steel door. So we're in good shape on that. The plan we really liked that came out of the DRC was the contractor will go around and mark all the places they think need to be replaced. Then we will come in with the contractor and the historic preservation planner and one by one go through the spots and decide what to do. Our expectation is that the trim will be restorable, but perhaps the flat panels that form sort of a decorative underpinning of the gutters may be rotted. Especially since we suspect they're not painted on the inside of the board. And if the gutter spilled over 65 years, we may find rot in there. So we're hoping that most of the PCB replacement will be flat boards, not trim. But if it is trim, we have considerable documentation on all of the trim in the building. Every piece of molding documented in hand-drawn architectural drawings. So we know the exact components. Was it a composite piece? Was it a single piece? All the angles involved in it. If we cannot find it in PCB, odds are we probably can't find it in wood either. But it would probably be a lot easier to manufacture it in wood than it would PCB. I don't know if you've ever worked with PCB, but it really does gum up your blades. And we could find hardwood and actually copy this ourselves. And there are places like Smooth Lumber that use like that. So that's the plan. We work with the historic preservation planner. We see what we have when we've actually seen it, and then decide what to do. If it's a PCB replacement, it would have to be approved by your planner. It's his decision whether he wants to.
The door also is now going to be repaired.
Yeah.
The door is no longer part of the project. We in fact are going to restore that over the coming holiday weekend.
Yeah, I left it in because we had already advertised.
Okay, I got it. So the whole slide is next.
Yes,
Okay.
it's a fun project.
Yes, does the DRC have?
I think Lauren characterized
Sorry.
the discussion accurately, or relatively accurately. And the main issue was that given that there are no individual guidelines for this district, it defaults to the Secretary of the Interior standards, which doesn't allow the PVC typically, but it has been the boards in the past has approved, particularly in other districts like Maywood, in areas that are prone to moisture and are not necessarily intricately detailed, as you were saying, as the applicant was saying, the flats and things like that, and in particular where they're not touchable or visible as easily. Which I think all of these could be characterized in that way. So given that the applicant has agreed to conform to that standard, I think they've satisfied, I think, what was the discussion at the DRC. And then of course the doors, our sense was that the wood, that it should be in wood, and since they're going to repair it, there's not an issue there either. So I think they've adequately addressed the concerns of the DRC. But if any of the other members feel differently, speak up.
Sounds right.
Did anyone else on the board have a comment?
I have a question. I was surprised when researching or, reviewing the materials, because I've been on the board several times when we've discussed COAs for this property, and the local historic district is mainly because the congregation has been there for so long. And when when it was denominated as a local historic district in 1978, the church was only 16 years old. It was only built in 1962. So is this considered a contributing structure to the local historic district, or how does that work?
So that's interesting because I think if maybe the church, let's say the building was buried, it's just a cemetery, and that would probably be just the main reason for the designation. But because you have the church too, and that's kind of the whole, I mean, even if the congregation wasn't there, maybe the church was being used in a different way, like the church is still contributing to the LHD. It's still part of it. It's that tangible aspect of it, even though it doesn't meet that 50-year threshold that we're used to.
I guess you're talking about church, and that you mean the building?
Yes. The building.
Okay,
Yes.
so, yes, I mean, I don't know, I know buildings don't have to be 50 years old to be considered historic, but it's almost as if we can give, I mean, not that we have to, I think the proposal for the board is splendid, but if we wanted to, I think we could give them a little bit of leeway, because the structure itself is fairly recent, and it's not what we typically think of as a contributing structure.
And I think that if we did have design guidelines developed specifically for this property, I think that would be something that would have been considered.
Right.
Since we do have to default to the Secretary of Interior Standards, which does have that more strict interpretation of how to handle this manage this property. But that doesn't mean that design guidelines can be created. They could be in the future. We can add that to our list of many things to do, but it's something that we've talked about because we know it would
You should
be,
put that on your list.
but I think,
Better ways to use your time.
but that is something that I think as you all are continuing to help manage this property, and help the owners be good stewards, there could be a way to allow more flexibility if you wanted, but I think it's all due.
Just a comment.
Well, I think it's exemplary the way that this has really turned into a partnership. You all have been very accommodating and looked for ways to restore the property in a way that, whether it is or is not historic building, it's in a historic area, and you're acknowledging that by the way that you're managing it and maintaining it. I think it sounds like an ideal way for a property owner to work with the board and with the board expertise to even make a property more historic or continue its journey toward being historic in this case, because now it's, 60 years old, right? So eventually it will be a property you'll be glad still reflects the way it was originally built.
Very much so. And it's part of my background too. During the Carter administration, I was administratively responsible for historic preservation in the United States. I managed the Historic Preservation Fund, cabs and air work under my personnel office. We wrote and published the first National Register of Historic Places. And so it's part of my DNA.
Well, it's an honor to have you with us. Thanks.
It's an honor to work on a beautiful building like that. And these are actually the original drawings done by hand long before anything. Just absolutely beautiful. This is our working copy. We have several copies that we don't touch.
I was going to say, you're taking a risk in the rain.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any comments?
I'm just gonna add, I think it sounds like a very sensible plan.
The finish up against the wood of making sure that they're seamless together.
Yes, we know we'll have to adjust the PCV because the measurements are not the same as wood that's on the chapel. And we do intend to prime and paint everything so it will look the same.
Sure, you guys looked at it, but
Yeah.
figured I would ask.
Yeah, we figured it out. And the paint they have today is just marvelous. We use Sherman-Williams emerald paint with a rain protection in it, where the rain actually washes the paint. And underneath it, we use Lexan primer on the bricks. And Lexan is a material that isn't just on the outside of the brick, it penetrates the brick and actually becomes very solid foundation for the brick, because our bricks are made out of concrete, not fired bricks. And we know if you took one of those bricks and put it in a bucket of water, within a month, you'd be able to pick it up and just crumble it in. So we have to make sure they're sealed everywhere on the church. Must confess, we're not very good about that.
Thank you very much. Okay, no one else has any more comments. All right, I move that the HLRB approve DOA 25-02 for 4102 North Glebe Road, Walker Chapel and Cemetery Historic District, based on the revisions to the COA suggested by the staff at DRC.
I'll second that.
You say yes if you support the project. If you approve the project, say no if you do not approve the project. Nathan Burlingame,
Yes.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Nan Dreyer,
Yes.
Robert Dudka,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster. Yes. Ray Henley,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Rebecca Meyer. Yes. Katie Myers,
Yes.
Mark Turnbull,
Yes.
Andy Winchell.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Lars.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Come back to you tomorrow.
See you next time.
Okay, next up we have 2332 for Neighborhood Historic District. Staff will give their report and then applicant.
Okay. All right, so here we're looking at 4102 North Glebe Road. That's
Wrong
the right
address, but.
wrong address. Oh,
Oh, there you go.
Fillmore.
Yeah.
I just didn't adjust this.
Right.
Okay, thank you. 2332 North Fillmore Street. So the Colonial Revival House at 2332 North Fillmore Street, a local historic district, was constructed in 1950 and is a non-contributing house to the district. Over the past few years, the HLRB has approved several changes to the property. In December 2010, the HLRB approved COA 10-28 for the partial demolition of the dwelling and the construction of a second-story addition and rear addition. The work included raising the existing side gable roof by 4 feet, constructing a new shed roof over the entryway, freezing the existing chimney by 2 feet, and building a brick patio with a wood retaining wall. No changes were made to the existing garage as part of this project. In June 2011, the HLRB approved COA 1125 for the installation of a new metal handrail, a front stoop, and the replacement of wooden siding in the front dormers with hardy plank. September 2017, the HLRB approved COA 1721 for the replacement of 2 metal basement awning windows with two light wood awning windows on the front elevation of the house. And then in February of 2018, the HLRB approved COA 1802 for the installation of a metal railing on the north side of the concrete stair leading from the sidewalk to the front yard. So the applicant is proposing to replace the existing wood garage door with a steel garage door. This is kind of breaking. The attached garage is below grade and located along the south elevation. The replacement door would measure 8 feet in width and 7 feet in height and feature a panel design with 4 lights across the top. The applicant is also proposing to replace the existing garage side entrance door, which is wood with a steel door. And the new door would be half glazed, measuring 30 inches in width and 80 inches in height, and feature 2 panels at the bottom with 9 lights at the top. See existing door that they would like to replace it with, and the existing garage door, and a very dark image, which is small, of the new garage door. So the DRC considered this application at its May meeting. There was some discussion about whether the doors could be restored rather than replaced. The applicant explained that the side door was warped and could not close properly, and that the garage door was largely inoperable due to the age of the internal mechanism. Mr. Wenchel said he did not believe that non-contributing houses should be held in the same standards as contributing buildings, and felt that it was appropriate for the garage door and side door to be replaced with steel doors. Mr. Dudka offered that he felt the door should be made of wood, but that someone could likely fix the existing. Mr. Davis mentioned that there have been other instances in Maywood where the HLRB has approved the use of modern materials for door replacements due to unfavorable conditions for wood materials such as high moisture areas. He said he did not believe this condition was met with this situation based on what was presented, and expressed a preference for wood doors. The commissioners believe that the full HLRB should discuss the project. As such, place the application on the discussion agenda for the May HLRB meeting. So staff recommends denial of the subject application. It's a little unique because we usually don't. It's kind of denial of why this is like. So the HLRB staff recommends denial of the subject application as presented. Staff prefer that both doors be replaced with wood doors of similar designs to the existing. While the house has non-contributing status in the Maywood local district, the Maywood design guidelines apply the same standards to both contributing and non-contributing houses in Maywood. The Maywood design guidelines do not state that wood doors are required in the district, and only notes that the repair or replacement of external doors with different materials and or a different design requires a certificate of appropriateness, and that there are many door types in Maywood that are made up of variations of wood panels and glass panes. However, the use of wood doors is the predominant norm in Maywood, and doors comprised of more modern materials have been limited to specific circumstances where the conditions of the area are not favorable for wood materials. Although Appendix G, Administrative Certificate of Appropriateness in the Maywood Design Guidelines, addresses detached garages and not attached garages, such as the garage in the subject application, it should be noted that garages with wood doors and wood side doors are considered appropriate and can be approved by HPP staff administrator. It is possible that the garage door and side door was original, although no concrete evidence was uncovered to definitively prove this. The house has experienced several additions and material changes. However, the attached garage is a prominent feature of the house, and both doors are visible from the public right of way. HPP staff believe that additional evidence would need to be submitted to justify the use of modern materials due to the presence of unfavorable conditions and the likelihood of the door in both locations failing due to these conditions. A majority of attached garages in Maywood have wood garage and side doors, as do a majority of detached garages. One example of an attached garage with a non-wood door was found at 2206 North Nelson Street. And although this is one example that exists, it is not the norm in Maywood. So, in sum, staff would prefer the use of wood for both the garage door and the side door. Proposed designs of both doors are appropriate for the district and are close matches to the existing. Specifically, the design of the garage door matches the designs noted on page G34 of the Maywood Design Guidelines. However, staff do not find under the presented circumstances that the proposed material for the doors is appropriate. That concludes staff report. And now if the applicant is online, they can have a moment to speak to their application.
Hi, Aruna here from 2332 North Fillmore Street. I had gone to Home Depot to, try to figure out how we can fix the garage door situation. And they told me they don't have any wood replacements that they can offer. And so I don't really know where to go find something that you're asking for. And so I was asking to replace it with some material that I could get there and I could have them install. But that's why I this application.
DRC.
Can I ask a question first? Can you remind us when this house was built?
We have a date of 1950.
Yeah, I think you characterized the discussion pretty accurately. One of the things that I noticed during the DRC is that the hardware on the garage door is the same as the hardware on my parents' house, which was built in 1959. So I'm pretty sure this is not the original door. It's a very, very early door. This is the kind of hardware that you would have used back in the 50s. So I think it's the original door. And the side door also looks like it's original. And so in discussing it, as you said, Andy was okay with the steel, but the rest of us felt that, given the guidelines and given that there doesn't seem to be any particular circumstances that would include using wood, that it should be either wood or if possible, that as we learned, as we saw from the last application, repair. That's, I think, a good painter, carpenter should be able and can often do that. It's often the woods that are used in old doors is often vastly superior to what's available today, and it's usually repairable, and often preferable at the end. But again, that would be for somebody to, who has expertise in restoring things like that to determine. That was the sense of the deal.
Well, I agree with everything Barbara said, except I think that I have worked with and talked with some of the people that wrote the original guidelines. And there was in historic districts, there was a discussion that isn't in existing, came forward as Secretary of Interior States to make a distinction between non-contributing and the contributing, with the idea that non-contributing most part more modern, and the modern materials would perhaps be appropriate for those. There's a strong argument. I don't disagree with Robert's comments about repairing, which they don't look that bad. But the mechanism for the problem shot. And that's going to be difficult to come up with replacement. I just think that a bit more discretion relatives on contributing structures is somewhat appropriate. I don't think that necessarily going to stand in with the intentions. I think that some different materials, it's going to be very difficult and expensive. You're not going to get a wood door as part of Home Depot. Any of the other places that any of the contractors rely on. Doors will have to be remade by or wood door fabricator, and perhaps more expense than the steel doors. So that's, I don't think that steel doors are such an intrusion. I don't. This particular problem. So that's.
And I just follow up real quick. The issue, the reason, the DRC asked that it be reviewed by the full board, aside from the fact that we weren't able to achieve consensus, is that this becomes a precedent setting issue. And if you allow a steel door here, then the next applicant may also expect to be able to use a steel door. And I think that could be an issue, going forward. This is a house from 1950 that is, if the district had been formed a little bit later, would be a contributing structure. And I think it's appropriate for it to adhere to the guidelines.
I'd like to point out that the house a couple doors down on Fillmore was required to have a wood garage door. And not just a wood garage door, but because it is an attached garage, it had to have the porch lattice structure that enclosed it, so it didn't look like there was a garage there. But we required a wood garage door for that particular structure. I don't know. Yes, this is a new house, new construction. So that was what we required because that was the norm in Baywood. And I don't see any reason to deviate from that in this particular situation. I understand the challenges with old doors and that sort of thing. Mine are 116 years old right now, and so the door may be a little bit more easily replaced, the side door rather, but it still should be wood. And there are salvage places where you can get doors that are old, that would keep the cost down, and you can get the ones that aren't warped that should be the right size. It looked like it was pretty, I don't know what the dimensions are, but it looked like a pretty standard door. If this garage was not visible from the street, and the garage door, side door was not visible from the street, there were the moisture conditions that were alluded to, this might make a stronger case for a steel door. The previous applicant talked about how the high cost of steel made restoring their door much more economical. So there is that to look into. Home Depot is not going to do these sorts of things. You've got to find other sources. I don't know if we have sources of wood garage doors and that sort of thing. So then we started to get a list of contractors and other people who did different things. Do we have anything like that? I don't have any examples of ones that have, but based on some of the recent examples of wood garage doors that the HLRB has required, we have one as recent from 2024. So we might be able to find what contractor those property owners used and make that recommendation. But I think I think the key thing to remember is that you aren't saying that they have to keep this exact wood garage door, this exact wood side door. They could also replace it with wood. Now, we all recognize that could be an extra expense, which I know is not something that HLRB needs to be concerned about, but reality, if somebody is trying to keep a project within a price range, there is to restore, repair, and restore. If it's the mechanism issue, then that's something different. But since that's on the inside of the garage, it's not something that the HLRB needs to be mindful of. So, so I think that there can be ways that we could try and assist and give some information. But again, I think that's one of the reasons why it's under discussion, because there have been many instances where in Maywood, the HLRB has required that garage doors be replaced with wood, or side doors or visible doors like this needs to be replaced with wood or restored, repaired. Yeah, I understand it. You don't want to, it's very difficult to straighten out a warped door, particularly it's been warped for a very long time and it's an exterior door. And I have no objection to replacing such a door with wood, but I do object to replacing it with steel in this location.
Anyone else? Comments?
Do we know how the non-wood door got put onto the contributing structure at Nelson Street? I mean, that looks like a comparable.
So I looked that up and I could not locate the COA when that happened, but I think looking at it from street view that they may have done like a new addition with where the garage was. So I think the addition with that door might have been the reason why it got approved. But it looks like it was done between 2012 and 2019. Fortunately, I have a gap at least with the street view. Is this a house that faces 22nd Street and the garage is on the side? No, the garage is facing the front.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, that's the one that, that we looked at for modeling. That's contributing.
That is actually contributing.
Yeah.
So you really don't know that we approved the,
I can't find the COA. I even
Okay.
looked into the paper
So
file. It's been a while since I've looked through that thing.
it's possible that it was not approved.
Knowing the history of that house, that would not surprise me.
I am not sure.
Okay, but we just don't know.
I don't have that information.
Oh, well, that's helpful though, Jerry, because I was thinking, I mean, they certainly look similar, right? And this one's compliant. This one is contributing, and the one we're talking about today is not contributing.
But it is contributing.
Well, I couldn't see it really far away,
Ranch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a ranch.
but it faces the street. The garage faces the street.
A number of us have been on the board long enough that I think we would have remembered, Jerry, I mean,
I do
I don't
not
remember-
remember,
I do
any-
not
I mean, I live
remember
around
this.
the corner from that house. Not remember anything
You certainly would
about a
remember.
garage door.
So I know an inspector who could help us try and find.
Okay, so anyone else want to weigh in on, good versus, not, or contributing versus not contributing, if that makes a difference in your opinion?
I would just add that it sounded like the owner, when she spoke, is content to use wood, but hasn't been able to find it. So perhaps with the help that you all are offering, then, that makes it a little bit, it doesn't sound like it's an intent to switch. It's simply, but you can comment on that if you'd like. I'm sorry, Mr. Name.
Yeah, I mean, I also can't spend, 20 grand on a new wood garage door. So was trying to figure out a way to make this work. The internal mechanism, like I mentioned before, is just, it might be the original garage door. It's sort of held together with duct tape and doesn't like move up if somebody goes under it. And I've got kids and I would like to just replace the whole thing. And, I don't know that I couldn't find anything that could work that would just replace it with a wood one.
I guess I would chime in too and say, I think, I have a pretty strong preference for keeping wood windows and doors in Maywood. And I think that's what we require for the vast majority of things. And I did, I've got my phone out, I did a quick Google search and I found, a company that has a wood door collection with my first search. So I would encourage, doing a little more research into the wood doors. I have looked at Home Depot for several items for my home and they aren't necessarily even the cheapest option. So I would encourage more research and, because I understand that, expense is part of the equation. But I would hope you could find, someone who could repair it. I guess a replacement door that is also cost effective. So.
We Google search found several carpenters that specialize in repairing wood garage doors in Arlington. So it's definitely possible to look a little bit broadly.
So we can try and help a bit more with providing at least some information. We can't make any recommendations, but I think sometimes it might even be as simple as asking neighbors who they maybe have used, or if they know of a carpenter that can help. So we can try and assist as much as we can from our side.
I mean, I will say last time I came to get something approved, I know my neighbor across the street got like vinyl windows approved, like grandfathered in, because he had replaced them without realizing he had to go before the board. So it doesn't seem like you always require, you make people take stuff out if they can't accommodate wood.
I think it depends, and I would have to know which property that is for us to talk, but I think it is a little bit different when talking about windows with us talking about doors and garage doors.
Anyone else want to chime in before I Okay. I move that the HLRB deny COA 5-03 for 2 North Fillmore Street in the Maywood Historic District. Because it does not contemplate using like-kind materials as required by the Maywood Historic District guidelines.
And just to clarify, just want to make sure everybody understands before you vote. Please say yes to deny the project. Please say no to approve the project. Does everyone understand? It's opposite day.
Yes.
A little bit. Okay. So on that. Nathan Burlingame,
Stick.
Mari Davis,
Yes.
Andre,
Yes.
Robert Dudka,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster,
Yes.
Ray Henley,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Becca Meyer,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Mark Turnbull,
Yes.
Andy Winchell.
Yes.
Motion passes, which to clarify means you're denying the project. Thank you very much for attending tonight, and I'll be in contact with you tomorrow morning with some extra guidance.
Okay.
Thank you. So now we are on to our next item. Not 2332. Is the Inn of Roslyn site plan project. Now, I hope we can squeeze. We have, it's up to you if you want to stay there, if you want to join the party.
I can easily be heard from the seat.
Okay.
So I'm not worried, but Yasmin is going to do some more of the overview. And so maybe she wants to take the seat up front.
Up to you. I'm going to give a little bit of an intro. Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I can go there.
That sounds fine.
It's easier for me to read my notes here rather than have to state in front of anyone. Because if I miss something, I'll just feel so terrible.
Okay, not a problem. And so I have some slides, but the project team also has some slides. So with that, the Inn of Roslyn site plan project. That's 1601 North, 1601 Fairfax Drive. And I always like to explain why the HLRB is seeing this project. So the Inn of Roslyn is on the Historic Resources Inventory, also known as the HRI. It is ranked as important top third. The HRI ranked garden apartments, shopping centers, commercial buildings. I pulled the text because it's a commercial building based on its historical and or architectural. So the HRI, this is a little learning moment, again, ranks 394 historic resources throughout the county. There are 6 ranking categories. Our gold is essential. Our silver is important. Our bronze is the notable. And then we have the other categories, minor, altered, not historic, or demolished. So I want to just clarify the important top third. So if you look at the number, our properties that are ranked as important is 134 properties. That is our largest category. And that kind of became a bit of a challenge to manage in the early days of the HRI. And I believe it was 2015 when the county board, might have been 2017, the county board requested that we really kind of create, it's earlier than that? Okay, well, I'll think about it. That they wanted kind of a subcategory to be important. And so there was a whole scoring system to how the properties got ranked. And basically the properties that are in the top third of the important category were only like 1 point away from being considered essential. And our essential properties are ones where we feel that there's a lot of architectural integrity, or there might be a lot of historical significance, just to kind of clarify that. And then lastly, the HLRB, that's live, sorry. The HLRB sees these projects as a requirement when we have properties that are ranked as essential or important, and if they're possibly going to be redeveloped, that they are reviewed by the HLRB. That's really the only requirement that we have in the HLRB for our important categories. So, and just to kind of give you a little bit about the.
Sorry, can I ask one question?
Yeah.
It's on your previous point.
Yeah.
So the properties listed on the historic resources inventory are not necessarily local historic districts.
They're, no, not, a lot of our essential properties might have local historic district designation, or they might have an easement on them. But no, not, the historic resources inventory are really just a way to manage the whole portfolio of buildings in Arlington County and narrowing it down so that we try and figure out, is it appropriate to preserve these properties, try and see if we can work with property owners to designate them or get protections, or if they're fortunate to be located in a National Register historic district with many, they could get tax credits, rehabilitation tax credits. It's a way for us to really kind of narrow down the amount of buildings that we're trying to advocate for.
Thank you.
Great question, thank you. Just a little bit of an overview. The Inn of Roslyn, it used to originally be known as Motel 50. It was constructed in 1940. It's considered kind of one of the remaining mid-century modern buildings along Arlington Boulevard. There also is like a handful of motels, hotels that really would have been ideal to be along this major corridor. And it definitely represents kind of a commercial architecture that helps support the growing population in Arlington County during and after World War II. I took a try to kind of develop what I think are the character defining features of this building, because when it comes down to the general understanding of the historic significance of the building is kind of it's a part of the commercial infrastructure that was really built up during and after World War II. But then when we look at the character defining features, you know, it's a 2 to 3 story height building. It has this horizontal massing and flat roof, U-shaped building form. It has this overall automobile centric design. It has these kind of exterior corridors that was known for this kind of architecture, as well as exterior staircases with floating walls. There is kind of a 2-story lobby with large glass panes. There's kind of a geometric pattern going on with the railings, a large cantilevered sign that you really can't miss, which would have been on purpose so that people would see it very clearly for its commercial. And the materials that seem to be notable are brick, steel, and flagstone materials. And here's a historic photograph postcard from eBay. I'll reference that so you can get a sense of what it kind of looked like. This portion of the sign is not there anymore. It probably would have said something like TV, AC, something.
Motel.
Motel, modern amenity to it. And this is kind of the existing conditions right now. You can kind of see also the lobby space, you can see the sign, as well as kind of the open stairwell, kind of gallery space. So with that, I'm going to stop talking because this is really the moment for the applicant to explain their project and talk about what they are trying to achieve. And this is also, then after that, then you can ask any questions that you'd like to staff or to the applicant. So from here, I do have nope, that's not what I want.
Middle tab.
Yeah, it's still the middle tab. Thank you. All right.
Well, good evening, everybody. Nicholas Cummings here with Walsh Colucci, a land use attorney. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, which is Monument Realty, and we have Josh Olson here with them. Our architect, Yasna, is going to go over the building design and how it was inspired by the existing building in just a moment. I want to start with a really brief overview of the project and some of the policy recommendations that for the site that really guided our work. First, I want to locate us. If you go to the next slide. So if you can see us, we're that little red dot down there, and we filled in our proposed structure in gray there. Behind that is the Union on Queen. That's in gray just because the building wasn't showing up on Google Maps yet, but we wanted to give you a sense of the relative massing and our location. We're right there, sort of on the edge of Roslyn neighborhood, right along Fairfax Drive and Route 50. It's also, this is right across Pierce Street from the Red Lion site plan project. I don't know if anyone follows what the county board approves, but last year they approved a project there that is somewhat similar in shape and in form and in style to what we proposed. And that one's actually under construction now. Next slide, please. So our proposal very generally is to demolish the existing motel and construct an 8-story residential building with up to 142 units and about 127,000 square feet of residential gross floor area. There is no retail proposed for the site. There's also none that's recommended. The parking ratio about a 0.45, though our effective parking ratio, once you add in a bunch of compact parking spaces that we have, is closer to about a 0.6. That parking supply is limited here in part because we've discovered bedrock beneath the site, really can't excavate level of parking. It's one of several site limitations. It's just a bit of a struggle. We are proposing several on-site affordable units. Sector plan requires, area plan, excuse me, requires us to contribute about 20% of the gross floor area between a 1.65 and a 3.24 FAR on site. That equates to about 7 to 8 units in, if they were all 1 bedrooms. We're also participating in the county's green building incentive program that includes gold and other measures like energy efficiency and bird-friendly glass. We're also open to earning some of the additional density on site with further on-site affordable units. So it's likely that the final proposal for this site would include more than 7 or 8 affordable units, probably a good handful more than that. We can move to the next slide, please. So the next one here, that really brings me to the historic preservation aspect of this project. I'm sharing this slide here, which is the historic resources map from the Radnor Fort Hire Lights area plan, which is the actual area plan, the policy guidance for our site. This plan surveyed historic resources in the neighborhood and ranked them and marked certain buildings for preservation. The issue here in part is it specifically did not identify the Inn of Roslyn for preservation. Instead called for it to be demolished and replaced with new development. Obviously the HRI, as Lauren was explaining, ranks the building as important. And this is not the first time that we've seen inconsistencies across planning documents. Our team obviously understands that the HRI came later and is still a policy that needs to be adhered to and respected. The county board's adopted. The challenge for us is that when designing this building, we have multiple competing influences, and all of the recommendations of the area plan for design of the building don't take into account any historic preservation, because when the area plan was developed, no one thought the building should be preserved. The area plan calls for the building to be designed as Art Deco or Colonial Revival. It also calls for it to mirror the garden apartment aesthetic as we turn the corner onto Pierce Street with an open space there. So then we add to that the desire to preserve some of the design elements of the existing structure, which is called for, arguably by the HRI. And we're faced with these 3 competing design influences that are difficult to satisfy in one building. Yasna is going to walk you through how she has tried to reconcile those competing influences in several ways our design was influenced by the existing building. I think she's done a fantastic job of that with a somewhat difficult situation. I'll note for context too, the small size of this site, the sloping grade, the bedrock that we discovered, the need to fit in all kinds of necessary building functions, transformers, garage entrance, loading entrance, building entrance, all of that in a tight site, in addition to the recommended, potential open space. So we're now also working to incorporate all of that creates a huge challenge on this site. So we've been balancing a lot of different equities, a lot of different competing influences. We've tried to come up with the best possible project. I'll note too that we are working on various biophilic design elements, some additional greenery up and down the building, and an open space along Pierce Street, all of which we're going to be hopefully ready to present at the next SPRC meeting. And so that's going to be unveiled a bit more as we go along. None of that really, though, should influence the ways that we've designed this building to echo the historic heritage of the property. So with that, Yasna, I think we can go right ahead.
Thank you very much. So good evening, and Yasna Bielich, my name is Kathy Scott, and I had the honor to design this building. So the site is difficult, as Nick already mentioned. It has all these problems. It has an angular shape. It's relatively small. It has a very high bedrock that was raised because it's level here. So it's basically almost down to the surface. But the location is exceptional. And that's why we think this is very important building. We started this 4 years ago. We thought, this is 21st century building. Now we are going to really do some signature building. So anyway, we are dealing with all these different influences, and the building is becoming more and more complex. But I believe actually that there are some benefits in talking to all of you, especially thank Lauren that even and the slides that we will share with you later, and his guider and his staff is really supporting this project. The only thing it's very hard to check all the boxes. So anyway, this is where we are. Like the building uphill, was designed with Davis Carter Scott probably 20 years ago. I think the whole urban plan, Fort Myers North plan, was considering these two sites to be developed simultaneously, which didn't happen. So it was calling for like 8 floors, very small footprint in relationship with the next door site that would be FAR, to the certain level. And then, but right now, this whole property is like fenced off. We couldn't take the best photographs. We kind of relate to Google Earth, but that's the motel. And as much as we tried to work with all the other challenges, we kind of respect what was built. It was built 50 years, 100 years ago almost. But it does have like some kind of ambition and architectural presence here. And this big sign actually was one of our inspirations when we designed the building, because it's not only sign, it's part of the building. This really like is framed with the building structure. It has this very pronounced storefront, and we like the railing that is got zigzag railing. We were really trying to incorporate these exterior stairs, but it didn't work with residential buildings. So if you go another slide, so we were just trying to say, and this is what we are proposing. So if you see the building itself, one biggest inspiration was the big cantilever slide that we kind of gimmick in those 2 slice walls, but they were there at the same time to follow the major views. So this wall is parallel to Prairie Park's Drive, so you can see this building for miles when you're coming from Roslyn. And this then the Route 50 turns around. So this is really parallel with the King. So you can see this corner miles away. So we created that's how it started. So it was the sign that was kind of replicated in proportion, and it's cantilevering. Then there were corners, so that's how we got excited about the building. But it's maybe not part of what we are talking about, so we can slide further. But we think it can be a very pleasant building. So this is just here as information, like this is our ground floor plan that by zoning was designed to follow the curb, and all this is incorporated in the Fort Myers North urban plan. So then, so that's a heavy podium. But then when you come up, like the top 5 floors are actually on that concrete podium. So this is wood structure, and that's L-shaped building, creating this terrace for the residents, a little bit more green for the neighborhood. And then this is really here for information. So like our bedrock basically goes way higher than this. That's that was wishful thinking, but we are more here. And that really makes it very expensive and hard to build underground parking and all that. So that's another problem. But here we are. So some of this is from Lauren, but some of them are from Chris Kreider. So we appreciate, they're nice slides from the Arlington, from Miami Beach. And that's mostly Art Deco that was kind of something that was referenced in the Fort Myers plan as potentially you can be a colonial revival, or you can be like Art Deco because it's very present in Arlington. But at the same time, we wanted to keep story going, so we wanted to include some elements of hotel, and it's really difficult. It's kind of you are starting to create very inconsistent building. So if you keep going, so here we are. So we were looking at the existing building and what can be preserved and how can we express that. We work with a sign. We really tried. And at one point we had L-shaped building that was kind of having just exterior lobby, 1 story, and it was easy to put that on the top of that. But when you have a building that has to follow the curve, if you want to mount this on the grade, your 1.5 floor is totally blocked. You have a concrete slab in front of you, residential windows. So I think the idea is, and partially it came from Lauren, we are creating a historic marker. We want to keep kind of the story, and you will see, like we are putting this on in the similar orientation and similar location where the sign is, but it's small for people walking by that are facing. And we have actually slides, so I can talk about it. And then we like the brick, and this is kind of something that is referenced in the plan, like a Fort Myers plan, that peach brick is recognized as a signature or historic. Then we really, like this is very prominent, so we use the same geometry on our lobby. We did move our entrance was to the middle of the building facing Fairfax Drive. We moved the lobby and we only towards Pierce Street. That was another recommendation. Then the stone wall that is actually used here along the sidewalk and along the building used again. So if you go another slide up, so this is our design, and you can see that the stone is used here. So this is something that you see walking next to the building. The railing itself that you can see on Motel was used just a little bit tighter because this opening is away more than like a 4-inch like sphere. So we kind of replicated the railing, and then that's the sign. So that's a little sign here that is totally done proportionally to existing sign. And we designed it in order to the people driving by from their eye level and people walking on the sidewalk. At the back, we were thinking maybe to put some story, history of the neighborhood, maybe some photographs, working with HALRB or everything. And then I think that's it. So we can keep going. So that's the building. So the sign, this has to be updated. It's right here. And you will see we have a special slide just for the historic sign. And then that's our big gesture. That's our stone base. That's all peach brick. So something is kind of, there's some echoing of referencing it to Motel. And then so that's the sign. So if you're walking by here, you can see there will be it kind of is bleached, but it's 50 exactly as it is. It's going to be done as is, concrete slab with 3 wheels, with 50, with a structure that is gutsy. We will be talking to the planners. We had to kind of, this is not, the location actually has a reason, like we tried here. So there is infrastructure, we tried here, there are water meters. So it's not bad because this is exactly where it is today, like in reality. And then that's basically, and then, yeah, that's, you see, there is a big storefront that is replicating the 2-story lobby from Motel, and it's going to be corner entrance. So we did try. We tried. We like, to keep the history present, just not to raise everything and start from scratch. And that's how much we accomplished, really. So that's how it looks like when you are walking by. It's going to be very pleasant environment. And everything else is like, this is something like a little bit of Art Deco, like making it more historic. And I didn't talk about all these Art Deco elements on the buildings. I don't know, Lauren, is that the story for tonight?
I mean, it's up to you if you want to go into a little bit more detail. But I think the way that you've kind of shown that there's a couple, this is a much later Art Deco type design, more where you're starting to get Art Deco into modernism architecture, but it definitely has geometric styles to it, elements to it.
Yeah, so these are these coins, it's metal. So if you slide to the big rendering, which is a little bit further here. So, these are like a potentially flag poles that have this ornamental metal, which is so typical for Art Deco. And then we are creating these metal medallions that, again, replicate the language that you see on Art Deco buildings and repeating it here and going along the canopy. So.
Yeah, and the one thing I think I wanted to make sure that we took away here, and I think Yasna explained it really well, but just to put a finer point on it, is that those overhangs / that wall really at the front of the building, that feature is meant part to mimic the prominent sign as well. That was part of the inspiration for it. So there are a good 6-7 things that we pulled from the existing historic building that we wanted to repeat in the design here while still accomplishing all the other sector plan goals, which are area plan goals, excuse me, which, call for the building to make an urban street edge along Fairfax Drive, which call for that, open space along Pierce, which call for the Art Deco or the Colonial Revival as well. So there's a lot to put in here, but I think that we try to put it all together in a way that, makes the best possible design with all of those different influences.
So I have a question, because I don't see that the original building, the historic building, as anything close to Art Deco.
No.
Oh, that was reference.
That's
That is,
Plan.
That's the point. It's not an Art
It's
Deco building
organized plan.
and so why are you putting Art Deco elements on this?
because the area plan calls for an Art Deco building. Because the area plan
I
did
thought it
not
didn't
call
call
for
for-
preservation. of
I
the
thought it didn't call for any particular building at all there. Just
So it called for redevelopment
Right.
with an Art Deco style building.
Okay, I mean, well, no, I read through I'm familiar with the sector plan, and I did not realize that was specifically required for this site.
It's a design guideline for everything.
It was in the comments of the staff.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've had detailed, lengthy discussions with staff, and they've urged us to add more Art Deco to the building.
Wondered where it came from.
Overall, I appreciate how you've blended together so many competing influences and requirements. That's definitely a challenge. I actually like the nod to the panel, the floating panels in the Route 50. I think the way you space the windows, I think earlier you had a elevation we talked about, and the spacing of the windows really does make it feel dynamic, like you're coming on. I think that captures what I appreciated about Motel 50 previously. I'm not super attached to the building, but I did like the floating panel, and I think it captures what's happening. I appreciate that you have to integrate some Art Deco elements. I think that the way it's done feels more like an applique than an integrated part of the building. The banding, I see that. I think that's interesting. But this kind of antenna on the side we talked about during the SPRC, I think that's interesting because it's Art Deco. It's a nod to verticality, but it's not integrated. It's attached to it. And to me, it doesn't read as Art Deco. It feels kind of like a pastiche, which kind of takes away from the strength of these floating panels, which is really successful. Maybe there's something that you can do to pull from the Route 50 building to bring it into Art Deco a little bit. I mean, the triangles and the shapes of the banisters, maybe that could be some sort of motif that you bring down the vertical. When I think of Art Deco, I think more of layers. I think of geometry that sinks in and pushes out. But this metal band that I see, that doesn't read Art Deco to me. I'm not sure. Almost 1980s. I get a little bit lost when I see it. But maybe there's something you could do with a banding to bring it together.
We change it because you're gonna like it.
To me, it looks the same. But
They're constructive and helpful comments. I really.
No, because
But one thing I think that you mentioned was the Garden City apartments. I don't read that in this at all. To me, garden style apartments are very much about bringing in the landscape, even from the ground level. And I'm not reading that here. I'm just wondering if that's something that you're hoping to integrate later, or if there's some
I
sort of
think you'll see
interpretation.
more of that. Yeah, so I
Okay.
think you're gonna see more of that if you come to the meeting on the 9th in June.
Uh-huh.
Because we are working to establish an open space along Pierce. That would bring that in. On that side, at least, it's more of the garden apartment aesthetic. It's a challenge.
Okay, and I know previously there wasn't an emphasis on preserving original material. Has that been a conversation that might be integrated into this?
we need a lot of points that lead curve, but I don't know if that stone can be
Salvage. Any element.
and the railing cannot, because it's they are not like you can they're really wide.
About the railing, would it be possible to maybe recuperate the railing, essentially have the railing as it exists now, that's behind it, switch through like layering between two railings together, sort of essentially solve that sort of secure problem, but actually having a modern railing, maybe a simple, something maybe less expensive on the backside, to sort of keeping that existing the actual railing itself there.
But I don't know if that will disturb the nature, because you can mount the railing on the glass or on the metal mesh, but it wouldn't look exactly.
Yeah.
It would be decoration then, but it's right. And we don't know, we didn't, we cannot get close to the building because of fence. What is the stage, like how solid that, like how deteriorated the metal is. But the only way is that.
Yeah.
Like, or if it's somewhere on the ground, if it's just almost like another exhibit.
Yeah. Well,
But because you have to be points, like nothing like the
Yeah.
points cannot go through, and we realize that this is way more, it's almost double.
Yeah. And I think I like the idea of reusing material, but to your point, I don't know that reusing that railing would achieve anything, given the limited quantity that you would have. And
yes, and we are using it to see it's all of it.
Well,
all of it, and yet we need a lot.
And I think doing a replication of something inspired by it would be more successful to bring that forward from the existing motel. But
Yeah.
I would not encourage reuse on the building. If you wanted to do it somewhere decorative at the ground, sure. But
I think that's a good point, because it would be a serious challenge from a building code perspective.
Right.
We were using a railing that was A, structurally potentially unsound, but B, has the incorrect spacing to the top.
and you would do it on one balcony and the other 10 would have, like, I think it.
Yeah, and it may be that, and sometimes we do this with site plan conditions, et cetera, especially for buildings like this, that if we are able to during construction find something that could be preserved or used or saved, that we would at a minimum hand it over to historic preservation staff, but also maybe it's something that gets worked into a display or something else that helps honor what had happened here and what the building had been. Just because, it's so difficult to know until you really get in there and start breaking everything apart what can be saved. But there might be a few things that could certainly be part of like the lobby display, or even part of, a connection to the expression on the back of the historic marker as well.
And this railing, I mean, the shape, that personally I was kind of intrigued, because you don't see that. Like, and so then when we did it from today's standards, it became actually sharp design, and it's we're using this bronze color. That's regarding Art Deco, they like old and all this hue. So yeah. I think that's gonna be very attractive on the building, can be anticipating little LED lights. So when you're driving, you see that. You will see that.
No, I agree with Alex. I think you've done it well for the nod to the existing panel and having that project out, but then also having the balconies behind it and lots of challenges. So
I'm gonna jump in with just a more big picture comment. I know you guys are into the details and I'm not an architect, but I'm sad that the building's gonna be demolished completely. And I don't think, you know, I like kind of your explanation of what you're incorporating, but I think the sign, not trying to save the sign in some way. And I feel like the angles of your project that could still be done. And especially where like the peach brick is, you know, it feels to me like the peach brick is being stopped by that white modern jutting out piece. Whereas if the peach brick came all along, it would almost be like how the Route 50 sign came out and hung over the property. So, you know, I don't think it's an unattractive building, but I don't think it really does much, you know, for capturing the current site, and, you know, any of the historic properties of the site. So, you know, I think the historic marker is cute that it looks like the sign, but for me, it just doesn't really do enough to, you know, recognize that it's an important historic resource that we're losing.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing I want to address is, you know, the guidelines. The Fort Myer is a very incoherent place. It's just a bunch of different buildings that have different styles. So yeah, I'm guessing at least one of them had Art Deco. There's colonial revival. There's all sorts of things in there, but it just doesn't seem appropriate to me to try to put all of them on the same building. And I don't see that the Art Deco. First of all, Arlington is not known for Art Deco. I mean, I can't. And it's not like South Beach where, you know, you have whole districts of Art Deco buildings. I can't think of any really distinctive Art Deco buildings in Arlington. And so I'm not quite sure that this is appropriate here.
Maybe the Cinnamon Draft House.
Yeah, there's a couple, but
The leadership building.
yeah, but it's not really a distinctive part of Arlington. And I agree that the elements that are here, to me, read more of just an applique. It's not really, the DNA of the building is not Art Deco, so I'm not sure that it adds anything to it, and I would prefer it without it. I think the massing of the building is actually quite nice and is more in keeping with the motel, which was, you know, which is mid-century modern. And I think, you know, having the exposed balconies on the end is actually sort of recalls that in the sense of, you know, that because it was one of these motels where the quarters are on the outside and and so that kind of real that recalls that to me. So to address the sign, I completely agree with what Katie was saying. I really hate this idea that we lose we lose historic elements. And then we get a sign that says, oh yeah, there was a historic element there. I find that actually insulting rather than helpful. And I would point you to the Bob Peck, the old Bob Peck dealership, which was on Glebe and I forget what cross street, Wilson, where there was a very distinctive geometric form, also mid-century modern, that has these diamonds that then they become folded plates that go into the building. And they couldn't save the building, but they did save that motif. And it's now, I think, one of the more interesting and distinctive parts of Ballston. And it recalls the building beautifully, even if the building's not there, you could drive by and remember the building. Anybody who's old enough to have been here to have seen that building, which was incredible, says, oh yeah, that's the old Bob Peck front. And I think you could do the same thing here, because I think, particularly at the corner.
This big,
Yeah,
the existing sign.
I don't see why you couldn't just put something across here. Sure, you lose a few windows here, but you might even be able to then introduce windows in the sign element. And so that, and then the sign element could run here and jut out from the building. And if the name of the building is on that, I mean, there's
To
different
just
ways to
fully
do that.
understand what you're suggesting, have both of you been suggesting using the existing sign? And
Not necessarily the
not
existing sign,
recreating something
like
just bigger?
a replica using the same sort of detail, the proportions and so forth. The Bob Peck sign is not the Bob Peck canopy is not the original, but they went by the exact dimensions of the canopy itself. So, and they changed, it used to say Bob Peck, I think, in the diamonds of that thing. They obviously didn't want Bob Peck on their building, so they changed that and they just did plain, yeah.
So
So I
we
think you
looked at many different ways to place that sign itself or something like it along or on the building. And there
Well, I think you have a real opportunity to do it at the corner there.
I mean, if they proportionally reduce the sign, this is our amenity, this is our unit, and.
Well, I mean, I'm saying you could even incorporate window into the sign, it could be a round window or something. I think there's a way to, because it's a big, the 50 thing, it's a big flat plane and it has the 50 in it. I don't know what was there before, but right now it's, the most distinctive thing is the 50.
It's always 50. It used to be Motel 50.
Yeah, Motel 50. So it's okay to have something in the sign. The name of the building could be on the sign. You could even have a hole in it that becomes a window for that unit. And then it would have, so I don't see any reason why you couldn't incorporate that at the end of the building, and then it would become a real.
We cannot touch the ground. I mean.
No.
Because
right
here, but because we were trying.
What I'm saying is it would be in this area, right in here.
Right.
And it could jut out from the building so that, it really becomes the distinctive element of the building, and it would really recall the sign. Anyway, that would be my suggestion. I think there's a way to do it, and I think that the massing of the building is very nice, and I think I don't agree with the Art Deco part. I'm not sure it's necessary, other than if you're trying to.
I mean, Art Deco, to be clear, it's not like we came to this and said we want to do.
No, I know. I'm saying I would suggest that you challenge, the guidelines, because I don't think that makes for good architecture, that somebody says incorporate, A, B, C, and D, and then you do. You make a cohesive building that's good and convince people why it should or shouldn't be that way. And I think I just don't see what the Art Deco elements contribute to the building.
I appreciate that. We absolutely can look a little bit more potentially at ways to, maybe it's a matter of some of that massing, recreating the sign, but it works around the units, et cetera. I mean, we'll take a look with that suggestion.
But you are talking about something transparent. It's not a piece of concrete slab. It's just geometry of the sign that is done in the.
Yeah, I think it's more recreating the intent and
Yeah.
look of it without necessarily, because we had struggled with the most was the fact that it's a massive concrete sign that is structured. And so that.
No, we're not saying concrete. It could be metal. I mean, it could be metal. I don't think it should be transparent, but I think it could have holes in it that have windows, because it's a big flat
Understood. I'm
plane.
thinking more broadly about ways that it could.
Yeah.
It's got a border around it and it's got a very distinctive post, or well, not really post, but a support for it. And
yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that I think.
But I think you've also done it, right? I mean, these big white panels that are floating are not just inspired, but they're functionally doing what the Route 50 sign did, right?
They're reaching out.
Right, it's reaching out, it's hovering along Route 50. I wonder if one of the things I do appreciate about the sign is it says exactly what it is. Not that you would need to put the 50 on the sign, but even on that little triangle area where you've got that little lounge on the terrace on the top, right there, even if you mounted, I don't know, a large steel kind of sculptural 50 in front of it, it would just be planes to kind of suggest and still advertise what 50 is along the highway. it can be separate. I don't think it needs to be something that's mounted literally to what that panel is. I think it can be a little bit abstracted.
The 50th.
Yeah, it was. But it was like, we had L-shaped building and then we had to meet the curve. And it was there. It was exactly what you are saying in this kind of incorporated environment and everything. But the problem with 50, we understand that and we can use the same lettering and everything. The owner really has to call the project 50, otherwise it says 50 and then it says 60. No, and it's really confusing. So we didn't get that commitment yet, you know, because if we put.
And that's been an issue with other site plan projects that have these kind of very iconic looking signs that are advertising what was there before. And that's really kind of caused a bit of an issue to figure out how do we come up with something that when the most ornate part of the building tends to be that sign sometimes and can't really make the property owner use that name that to their business. So there's something we have to kind of also recognize. So it's really been problematic. And for me, I've been trying to guide and say that that's too challenging to try and figure out a balance for. And yes, the conceptual signs did have an element like it. That's when we've been throwing out different ideas. Not everyone likes the historic sign idea, get it, but it was a way to kind of up a way to not cause confusion, but bring it back, and that whatever would be at least on the marker, which would be one element that could help talk about what was here, not the only.
And conversely, if the zoning administrator and the other powers that be would allow us to put a large prominent 50 or something on the building, called the building the 50, and then we had a much larger sign that anyone's permitted to have on their building, I may have a different problem, but I would be interested in getting that approved.
Well, I think in terms of the sign, the important thing is not the 50 so much as it is the big rectangle, you know.
I agree the style. I actually, and I just want to go down there. I would actually rather use the actual, physical sign still, but because I know you guys. And for my record, I know Gray has been trying. So.
Well, so I just would say, I think you have to make a choice here. What we're losing is a mid-century modern hotel, motel, and it's sort of the last one on the strip. There won't be any more, right? What you've tried to do is a gamesh between kind of mid-century, to the 2020s and deco. Why do that? Why not try as hard as you can to build a beautiful mid-century style building that evokes Motel 50 and all the others that used to run along that road? It's a perfect site. And you've kind of caught that with those panels. The need for any kind of Art Deco stuff on top of it, they're opposing architectural genres, right? I mean, the mid-century was a reaction to Deco. Deco was a reaction to Nouveau. So you're trying to do too many things all at once, I think. And I think the sign business, yes, the sign is what defined it as mid-century. So something that replicates that evokes that floating panel, that horizontal line, that kind of prairie feel that you got from the old hotel, which is disappearing. You don't have that. You're a high rise now. It's a modern building. It's all this mix up of different materials. It's what we see being built now. But if you could focus on just one design, go with mid-century and make it as close as you can to feel like and look like a mid-century building, that will honor the old Motel 50. The reason Peck works is that they had the Peck sign they kept, but then they put a very distinguished building behind it that holds it up, that reflects that. That whole building is glass, and it picks up the curves that come out of that portico. This really, I know you guys are trying hard to touch all the bases. I think you're trying too hard. I think you should get it as clean and streamlined as you can so that it evokes the Motel 50, which was a clear, streamlined building that it was a pleasure to turn in front of or to turn into as you went in, because it kind of stretched out and it gave you the entrance. The rest of Roslyn is, all blocks of high rise. If you can capture that mid-century feeling, nobody's going to complain that you didn't put deco medallions on it, if you can get there. But I mean, this will still be what it is.
I fully understand what you're saying. A lot of it, the challenge is there are different constituents that have to respond. And one of them is the area plan that was without any regard to all. And that's unfortunately the rubric against which we're primarily.
Can't argue that.
But I don't think it says you have to build deco.
But the whole point of,
We would support you.
right, the whole point of including Art Deco or the other elements is to hark to the historic nature. So you're sitting here in front of the historic board who's trying to tell you how to honor the history of this building and not necessarily introduce other elements that might have been in other parts of Fort Myer. This building is on this particular site where there was a very nice mid-century building, and that's what you should be honoring.
I understood. And I think that we've taken a really good point away about maybe something more that could be done to use those overhanging panels that are evoking the sign to reintroduce the sign more to it. And in some creative ways that could be done. So we're taking all that in, that could be helpful.
I think there's another way to see the requirement for Art Deco. It's not so much harkening to another building or replicating, but maybe bringing in the scale of some of the neighboring buildings. And I think if you were to look at not the white panels that do the overhanging Route 50 sign, but kind of the brick that you have at the bottom, you've got that band of articulation along the bottom at the streetscape, or even if it were to be an integrated detail where you have the antenna on that gray volume. I mean, there are other ways to integrate Art Deco that are a little bit more seamless, that still nod to it and break down the scale, which I think was probably the original intent, to break down the scale and make it feel contextual, not to replicate Art Deco. It's not 1920s New York.
We agree with all you said, but Art Deco is decadent style, and it's they use this kind of applications of the building. They were just decorating it without shame. And if you strip them of that, they will be totally contemporary buildings. They will come in with very gutsy, mostly white, like massing and everything, and then they will put gold and tiles. I mean, another Art Deco is this mosaic tiles and everything, you know?
Right, but if I have a mid-century modern building and I put Art Deco doorbell, it doesn't make an Art Deco building. That's the way I'm reading. But I think that there are definitely ways you could do that, integrate it, that break down the scale.
Oh yeah.
Just one more quick comment about the sign. If the original sign is not, I agree with what other people have said about trying to incorporate a replica that's maybe made out of a material that's more suitable for attaching to the building at whatever level. But if the original sign can maybe be brought into a lobby and incorporated in a lobby wall, it just seems like it would be a terrible shame to lose that sign entirely. I mean, it is.
Very small, but it's just tremendous. I mean, I should know, but if you go to that,
like the kid.
it is.
Yeah.
It's probably.
How big is it? It's hard to tell
High.
from the angle of the photo.
It's like a boxcar in size.
Yeah, it's big. So if you
Is it
go
like
to
2
that
stories
perspective,
high?
No, it's not 2 stories, but it's a full story.
it's full story. So we have to see that our amenity has a clearance and just put it on the wall.
Yeah,
We have garage wall inside because of the ground floor. Josh, if you go to the ground floor, so I think you have to scroll up, Lauren.
Even if you had to, perhaps shorten it a bit, you probably have a high ceiling in your lobby.
No, I'm sorry, this go up, yeah. So, and there will be something about it because it's garage door, a garage wall here. But no, it has to be here. Okay, let's look at it.
Yeah,
Because
we'll take a look at all these ideas.
I think
because
I agree with Nick. I think that you all have given a really good idea. I think you pointed out how we're all noticing the challenges with two policies conflicting with each other. one having been done before the HRI, to also not thinking of the ways that we've come up with more creative approaches to honoring existing architectural styles into new buildings like the bubble pet. So I think these are things that we can bring up to all of my colleagues who are managing this project with the project team to try and see what can be figured out.
Yeah.
But Alice has also been helpful with being the representative at the SPRC meetings, and you know when the next one's going to happen. Did you have?
Yeah, I won't pile on to the other. It said, can we go back to the, yes. I like a lot of the design elements from the existing hotel that you brought in here. I like that you're using peach brick. The one thing about the brick on the existing building, the form of the brick is very distinctive. I think isn't it the longer, it's like a long brick and it has dimension to it. And I would suggest potentially looking into that because it's hard to tell from these pictures.
Yeah, it's hard,
But I
you
know
have
this
to
one
get
pretty
them.
well, and I think they're long bricks and they have some sort of like dimension to them, or like depth to them. Yeah, you can barely see it there, but they're,
It's not a standard brick,
yeah, and the mortar lines, I think, are very, very narrow, and I would suggest
They're blending,
pulling that
yeah.
in there.
They're trying to match the colors. It's very monochromatic, which is.
Okay, so our new, kind of our new procedure here is, this isn't a project that we approve or deny, but we have been kind of instructed that they want us to kind of log our support or not support. So I'm going to do a motion unless someone else wants to do. I was going to do a motion that we don't support the current project as is, unless someone wants to do a motion. And that would be this project, like as it looks now, is what we're voting on. And I would welcome you guys to. It sounds like you're really taking into our ideas into consideration. Back and go with something else. Again, this is just kind of whether we support or don't support. We're not approving or denying the project. So I will go forward with that.
Katie, this may also be an opportunity if the board feels like saying it, that, that in our opinion, what needs to be reflected here is not colonial deco or whatever else, but rather what would be best in this site is something that honors the mid-century modern, the building that it's replacing.
Yeah, and I think our comments stand for what they are. I'm not going to try to incorporate everyone's comments into the motion. I think that would be too difficult. And so, but I think
it just gives them some cover.
Yeah.
But that's
well, yeah, and this is all on the record, so I think everyone has to for why they don't support.
And just kind of also, we found that when we were, let's say, and typically we would draft a letter that would say, what does the HLRB think of this? And one person would be the author. And we haven't sometimes circulated that around for you all to confirm that you absolutely agree that that's where the HLRB stands on it. So one of the reasons why we were starting to want to have you all make a motion on everything here so that we can clearly see where the votes are. Now, there's opportunities still for the project to have some changes. There's another SPRC meeting. So even though if the HLRB makes a vote based on the motion that you're going to propose, Katie, that the opinions could change as you're getting closer to the completion of the project. So that could be reflected in the traditional HLRB letter that gets sent to the planning commission. So there's opportunity to maybe say, even though we voted a certain way at the May HLRB meeting, we have seen the changes that have happened. We've had a representative during the SPRC, and this is where we support or maybe where we still don't support. So there's still opportunity.
I'd like to underline Katie's motion said we don't support the project as it looks now. And to me, those are the most important words, because The rest of the project, I think we're fine with the massing and things like that. It's just the, as it looks now, that we've done.
Question, has the county board of planning commission?
We are looking at September,
September?
so there is some time, certainly.
Because when I looked online, there didn't seem to be.
They don't really, I mean, we've had conversations with senior staff that have, marked out.
So there's some
September.
time.
Yeah, we're gonna be looking at a few things. I think we're gonna show some rush designs in June. We have made any decisions that impact this specifically, we incorporate that, and Alex can report back. If there's anything subsequent to that, we can give it to Lauren, who could show everybody here. And honestly, if it makes sense down the road, I can even here to explain where we are to. We'll see.
Okay, so I move that the HALRB not support the in abroad site plan as currently. Because the project did not follow the HRM goals and policy objectives for permanent properties, such as attempting to preserve the building's historical and material.
Anybody second that?
I'll second it.
And just to clarify, because I just want to make sure, because we're saying do not support the project. So please say yes if you do not support the project. It's opposite day. Please say no if you do support the project. So I'm going to call out your name. If anybody's confused, just stop me and I'll repeat. Nathan Burlingame.
Yes.
Mari Davis.
Yes.
Andrea.
Yes.
Robert Dudka.
Yes.
Andrew Fackler.
Yes.
Alex Foster. Yes. Ray Henley.
Yes.
Jerry Laporte.
Yes.
Joan Lawrence.
Yes.
Rebecca Meyer.
Yes.
Katie Myers.
Yes.
Mark Turnbull.
Yes.
Andy Winchell.
Yes.
The motion passes, which for clarity for the applicant, the HALRB does not support the project in its current state. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, quick chair's report. I did want to note, not only is Alex serving as the lead on this past project, but she's also going to serve as our primary member for the comprehensive plan update. And then our next meeting, our June meeting, JD Spain is going to be with us. He's our liaison county board. So you can think about what you may want to ask, or if you want to something you want me to kind of more present as a topic of discussion. We're not 100% sure if he's just going to come and introduce himself at the beginning of the meeting and then maybe has to go, or if he's going to stay for the duration, and then we could have a discussion period afterwards. But if you have thoughts or questions for me, and you want to let me know ahead of time, or if you just want to think about it before. And that's
Okay, so staff report. I'm going to let John take the thunder because we've had a lot of events that have been happening throughout the month. So
And the events that have been happening this month have all been tied to two of the markers that have already been approved by the HALRB. So I just wanted to take a minute to again highlight the good work that the HALRB has done, that the Historic Preservation is continuing to do, and give you guys also an update on where those markers currently stand in their physical state. So on Saturday, May 3rd, the Historic Preservation Program hosted the Remembering Little Saigon event at the Clarendon Central Park. This was a 3-hour table event that we hosted with our partners in Arlington Arts, Arlington Public Library, the Viet Place Collective, and Northern Virginia Regional Community College. The main attractions of the event were the public display of prints of the Little Saigon historic marker that has been approved. 2 prints were on display, one in English and one in Vietnamese, the Vietnamese language version being the version that will be accessible by the QR code on the finished marker. The event also featured walking tours from Kim O'Connell, local historian who was the main author of the Little Saigon Marker. And there was a public forum for sharing of memories that former members of the community and their descendants actually used to tell stories about Little Saigon. So great event. Again, it was only about 3 hours, but by our head count, we had maybe just under 200 unique interactions across all stations and events. Those prints were also used by the county board about a week and a half later when they were doing their formal proclamations for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So the prints are still out there, they're still being pushed, and everyone's very happy. Moving on, again, also at the recessed meeting of the county board, which took place on Tuesday, May 13th, we had our proclamation for Queen City. This is where the board had their formal proclamation acknowledging Queen City as well as Arlington County's failure to preserve the neighborhood. In attendance was Mr. William Ballin, who was one of us in designing the city marker. Lauren and myself gave a brief presentation to the board on the history of Queen City and on the marker process. The talking points that we came up with were incorporated by the board into their formal proclamation, and many of the points that we used in our talking points either came directly from the marker or the discussions that were had both here at the full HALRB meeting and behind the scenes with the marker subcommittee. So even if exact sentences or words didn't get incorporated into the marker, a lot of it has been put on the record by the county in their formal proclamation. This was a very well-attended meeting. There were a number of other proclamations and recognitions happening, so it was a full audience. Both the vote for the proclamation by the board, which passed unanimously, as well as the speaking moment from Mr. Ballin got standing ovations from the crowd, and it was a big moment to be a part of. So again, want to thank the full board, want to thank the marker subcommittee for all their work on these markers.
And then just to kind of let you all know, we are coming up with some other plans for the Lily Vincent State Highway Historic Marker. We are developing that and trying to see how we can kind of come up with an unveiling event sometime in June. But the other markers are also probably going to be installed in June as well. So we'll keep you posted on how that's shaping up. And then also just the last kind of thing to mention, the Brennan House update. So that is the local historic district designation that you all approved. That got the RTA by the county board was approved on May 10th, Saturday, May 10th. So now it's going to be going to the Planning Commission, the county board in June. So the Planning Commission meeting is on June 2nd. So we are looking to see if there's an HLRB member that would like to join Michael and I during that presentation, either in person or virtually, to get the support of that LHD designation. If you are, you can get in contact with me and can work on that. So other than that, that is our staff.
Can the board formally congratulate the new Historic Preservation Section Supervisor for Arlington County? I think we're all pleased.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Then I think we are adjourned.
Here.
Yes.
All right.
What it is.
I think those, yeah. I'm sure if they have.
I mean, I'm not an architect, and it was like a mishmash.
Yeah.
Even I can
There
see.
are some things that are, how do I think overall the message,
Probably.
I mean, it's better than what's there now. I love that panel group with David nostalgia.